And once again, it is our ESB 2024 player rankings. As today, we will touch on the top 10 designated hitters in Major League Baseball. And for the first time on our countdowns, we are a full house today. We have Tom, we have Corey, we have Joe. And today, we are talking about the designated hitter position and the top 10 players in the DH role. Now, before we get into it, and I'll kick things off with the first three on our list. The DH position gets a little funky because, of course, there's going to be players that we probably will touch on that at the time of opening day might not be the team starting DH. But right now, we are using the projected Fangraphs DHs going into the season. So obviously, this can change at any times, and a certain player that could be playing an outfield spot could be the DH, and it's going to be confusing. But at this point right now, we are going based off Fangraphs and their roster resource to list out our top 10 DHs today. So I'm going to kick things off. And hi, Corey, Joe, and Tom. I'm sorry to have you guys go so silent on me. But let's get into it with our first three here. And we have on our list Christian Yelich to kick things off at the number 10 spot, the former MVP. Had a bit of a bounce back season, and Yelich is going to be the team's primary DH after being one of the corner outfielders for the longest time. Yelich with a bit of a bounce back, 278 batting average, 19 homers, 76 RBIs for Mr. Yelich. Then our number 9 spot, very interesting because this player at this point is still a free agent in baseball. And hopefully by the end of our top 10 list, he's the only free agent that we mentioned here. But it is JD Martinez. And JD has just been a consistent top end DH for the longest time. And last year, 271 batting average, 33 homers in his age 35 season. So JD Martinez, of course, getting that love here on the ESB rankings. Obviously not by 30 other teams in baseball, but here he gets the number 9 spot. And our number 8 spot goes to Marcell Ozuna. And Marcell had a bit of a bounce back himself. 40 homer year for Ozuna, which was much needed after not eclipsing what he once did back in his early days in Atlanta and his later years with the St. Louis Cardinals. But yeah, last year, 274, 40 homers, 100 in RBIs. And at this stage of his career, you sign up for that any day of the week. So, Tom, you look at this list here, the first three. Is there anybody you want to touch on real quick?
Well, I don't particularly want to talk about Marcell Ozuna because he's a trash man. And I don't mean that as a sanitation worker. I just mean he's trash. I didn't put him on my list because he shouldn't be on anyone's list.
Well, that's hot. That's great analysis there. How about you, Joe? Anybody you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about Christian Yelich. Obviously, he's going to split time between outfield and DH, but look for the Brewers to prolong his career. Listen, he really has kind of rebounded, and slowly rebuilt himself off the MVP years. He goes into the COVID years. He starts having back issues, and really has started to remake himself. And then you see what he did last year, 278 with a 370 on base percentage, 19 home runs, 76 RBIs, not far off from his last years in Miami and what he kind of was back in Miami, not focusing on the power, focusing on getting on base, focusing on getting base hits, driving the ball gap to gap. So for me, I think we're going to see a little bit of a resurgence in Yelich, and we're going to see a stabilization the next few years. I think he's going to be on this list for a while, just because he's found that in between being the MVP and kind of being an all-star level player.
Yeah, and I just want to talk on JD Martinez. And it's funny, while we're doing this list, he doesn't have a team, and it's possible that might have hurt him slightly. But really, JD Martinez is the prototypical DH, a guy that pretty much any team in baseball would love to have in their lineup. And his age 35 season had 33 home runs, 103 RPI, OPS of 893. I mean, this is exactly what you want in a DH. All-star the last 3 years, 5 of his last 6, if you exclude the COVID-shortened season where he struggled. But a lot of players did. It was a weird year. So I hope JD Martinez signs with the team soon because any team would be glad to have him.
Absolutely. Joe, I know you have the next trio here, so let's touch on the next set of DHs.
Yes. So the next set at number 7, we got Masa Tanaka Yoshida here. I butchered that first name.
Oh,
That was not great.
Played it.
Masataka Yoshida of the
Turned into
Boston
Tanaka.
Red
That's a
Sox.
hero.
Coming off of his rookie season, we got number 6. Somehow made it this high. Giancarlo Stanton of the New York Yankees, coming off maybe the 2 worst seasons of his career. And number 5, we have Eloy Jimenez of the Chicago White Sox, who seemingly only has to stay healthy in order to put himself even higher on this list. So, guys, we'll go around the room and we'll start with Corey. Who are you focusing on here on these 3?
Yeah, and I want to call out Jimenez too, because he's still pretty young. I mean, he's only 27 coming into this year. But I mean, you said it, Joe. If he could just stay healthy, he's a really solid bat to have in the middle of your lineup. A really nice right-handed power bat. But he just keeps getting hurt, and that's the name of the game. Outside of last year, where he did get 120 games, only 84 the year prior, 55 in 2021, and there's all freak injuries. So he's not really going to play much outfield anymore. He's going to be primarily a DH. That's why we have him on this list. If he could stay healthy, though, he's a nice power bat to have in that lineup.
Tom, who you got?
Yeah. Listen, I think, guys, we might need to make an adjustment here. Giancarlo Stanton, as we were recording this, just hit his 3rd home run of the game in spring training. I think at least gets him to 5, if not 4. We went from Big G to Slim G this year. Stanton came in much thinner than he has in the past. Again, we have him listed as a DH. Apparently, he wants to play more outfield this year. But boy, some of the balls he hit tonight, I know it's just spring training, but those were absolute nukes. He's been hurt a lot the past couple of years. But when he's healthy, he does still produce. And, I think if he's not going to get back to that MVP form, that's going to be close to 6-7 years ago at this point. But he absolutely can be a threat in the middle of the lineup. He's still a guy that I think pitchers fear, even though he doesn't always, he's not always on the field. But when he's there and he's healthy, he's a threat. And I think this could be a huge bounce back year for Slim G.
Tom reminded the people at home that we're not live today. But I will talk about Masataka Yoshida, that's how it's correctly pronounced there, Joseph. And Yoshida, in his first year campaign, by the way, this is a guy who's going to be making $18 million to the Red Sox per season. And I think for Boston, for a 5-year, $90 million contract, they will sign up for this first season any day of the week. 289 batting average, an on base of 338, an OPS of 783, 15 bombs, 72 RBIs. Now, a little odd then in his second year that he's going to be slipping into the DH role, but of course, I'm not going to argue with Fangraphs. That's where they have him projected. He will be the starting DH for Boston, according to Roster Resource, and Yoshida slips in at our number 7 spot. All right, so next up with our next portion of the list, we're going to go over to Corey Favs. And Corey, which DHs do you want to talk about?
Yeah, so looking at the next set of players on our list, we have Jorge Soler at the number 4 spot. Soler just signed with the Giants in this offseason. We're looking to get some power from the DH position. Very nice year, 36 home runs, 75 RBIs, 853 OPS. The thing with Soler is he's a little bit streaky. Last year, 2 years ago, he was injured, only played 72 games, but only hit 207, 695 OPS. Back in 2019, had 48 home runs to lead the American League, but he's had some streaky seasons in the middle. So Giants are really hoping they're getting that 36 home run hitter in the middle of their lineup. Then we go to the 3 spot, which is Kyle Schwarber. And as being a Mets fan, I know how much Kyle Schwarber could wreck a ball game and hit some bombs, really moonshots that you get out of the DH position with Kyle. And again, Kyle Schwarber, 31 years old. He's right in the middle of his prime. 47 home runs and 104 RBIs last year, 46 home runs the year prior. So there is no shortage of power from Kyle. The biggest thing with him is the average, as he did hit below the Mendoza line last year. But if you're hitting 47 home runs and 104 RBIs, you could actually live with the Mendoza line. And then at the number 2 spot, I want to bring in Tom in a moment here, but for Yordan Alvarez, he was actually my AL MVP prediction for those of you who watched the prediction show earlier. But Yordan Alvarez, really nice career so far for the young DH or outfielder. 31 home runs, 97 RBIs, consistently hitting 30-plus home runs in each of the last 3 seasons. This is a guy who could be an MVP at any given moment. I think he's going to be one this year. Tom, what are your thoughts on Yordan?
Yeah, he was my pick for MVP as well in the AL. And from the first time I remember seeing him in Houston, probably back in 2019, he just reminds me of David Ortiz, and the fear that put into my soul was something. He has had a little bit of injury history the past few years. Played 114 games last year, 135 before that, 144. If he's a guy that can stay healthy, he can give you 150, 155 games. I think he's at least a 40 home run guy. I think he's someone who could be a 50 home run guy, ton of RBIs in that lineup. He's about as scary, honestly, as it comes in the AL. So yeah, I had him number 1 actually as my DH in my own rankings.
Yeah, and I want to focus on Kyle Schwarber a little bit here of the Philadelphia Phillies. And Schwarber is kind of the model of feast or famine here. Led the league in home runs in 2022, but also led the league in strikeouts both in 22 and 23. Had 47 home runs last year as well. So Schwarber is the definition of all or nothing. He is the perfect 3 true outcome player, but he has game wrecking power. And he's going to be mostly the DH. He's a terrible fielder. He's never been a good fielder. And the Phillies are now at the point, now that Rhys Hoskins is no longer there, where Schwarber is going to primarily play DH. But, it's an interesting player because he is a true game wrecker. But at the same time, there are times where he strikes out all the time. And there are times where he disappears completely. So, you get that perfect incarnation of the 3 true outcomes in Kyle Schwarber.
And can you believe Jorge Soler is entering his 11th season in Major League Baseball? I feel like it wasn't that long ago where he bursted onto the scene with the Chicago Cubs. But 2014, I guess that's a long time ago now. But Jorge
Feels
Soler
like he's on his 11th team.
Yeah,
well,
that too.
He's been around 4 teams, kicked around there, but with at least with the San Francisco Giants, and the Giants all of a sudden can now sign players. They had an offseason where they finally got players that they actually had interest in, which was not the case in the previous 2 off seasons prior to the 2023-2024 offseason. But Jorge Soler inked a 3-year deal, $42 million to be the Giants' primary designated hitter and absolutely, fill in the corner outfields when needed. Soler last year, his second career high, second to his career high, 48 home runs back in 2019. He had 36 home runs last year in 2023, a 250 batting average for Soler in his lone all-star season. So Jorge Soler in our number 4 spot. And again, we need to get to the number 1 because what's the point of doing a top 10 countdown if we don't get our number 1, right? So yeah. Thomas, who is our number 1 designated hitter entering the 2024 season?
Daniel Vogelbach was voted number 1 in the ESB rankings. Former Met, current Blue
unless
Jay.
Daniel Vogelbach got real tall, real skinny, and real Japanese. That is not Daniel Vogelbach.
Daniel Vogelbach is not number 1. I'm being told it's actually Shohei Ohtani, guy who signed a $700 or $400 million contract this offseason, depending on who you ask and whose accountant you're working with. Made the move from LA to LA, from the Angels to the Dodgers. And although he will not be pitching this year, he is still a absolute menace at the plate. Coming off another MVP season last year, he had 44 homers. That is, he led the league in OPS plus and slugging percentage. And he did that again, only hitting in 135 games, hitting 44 home runs. So if he's going to be a primary DH this year, which obviously he will be because he won't be playing the field, he's not going to be pitching. This is a guy who, we could really see in the mid 50 home runs. He could maybe even challenge 60 if he's really, locked in all year. Incredible power from the left side, and we'll just be focusing on DH this year. So it's going to be interesting, I think, where previously he's had to focus on, not just hitting, but pitching and scouting reports and rest from all of that. A year where he's just fully a hitter, I think it's going to be interesting to see how much better he could be. And what do you guys think about what else do you think about Shohei?
Yeah, I mean, Shohei Ohtani, in my opinion, is the face of baseball, and I think he was well deserving of this number one spot. I mean, you said it yourself, Tom, running through the stats. I mean, he's right up there at the top of so many critical stats to judge a hitter, and I don't care if he's not pitching. It actually helps him, again, as you said before, the only guy on this list who could potentially challenge Ohtani this time next year would be Yordan, but I think Shohei is the face of baseball. I think just like Rushman, for those of you who saw our catcher video, he's going to be cemented number one for a long time. I expect Shohei to be here as well for a long time.
Yeah, and actually, there were rumors. I was watching the game this morning in Korea that Ohtani, when he is cleared to start throwing, might actually play a little outfield this season to get himself in those games. I'd be interested to see that. I think he has the potential with his speed, with his arm, to be a Gold Glove right fielder. And I think Ohtani is going to be at a crossroads this year because he is going to focus on hitting. I think he could provide so much offense and so much offensive impact that he could potentially put pitching to the side, considering he is now going for a second Tommy John. So I think we can see a future where Ohtani's pitching is going to be less and less even after this year if he puts up the kind of prolific offensive numbers that he did next year and actually improves upon that. So, but either way, he's a fixture in the Dodgers lineup, and between Freeman and Betts and him, they're going to have a prolific offense this year, and he's going to be a big part of that reason.
You said it. And another Los Angeles Dodger is at the number one spot here on our countdown. And I think Shohei Ohtani, of course, you can't go wrong with a two-time MVP. Ohtani, that OPS is just stupid looking at these numbers. 1.066. Are you freaking kidding me? Shohei Ohtani, one of the best players in the game, and deservingly our number one designated hitter for 2024, at least ahead of the 2024 season. But that is it for another edition of our ESB 2024 rankings. We leave you with the countdown, and make sure to like, share, and subscribe our video. Give us a subscribe on YouTube. Our top 10 DHs. Congratulations, Shohei Ohtani. Take care.